Clara, we appreciate you joining us on Florida Live today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Clara, according to the Miami Herald's reporting, we know the Trump administration has canceled the visas of dozens of international students across the state, part of their crackdown of college campuses across the country. If you could first kind of walk us through the numbers that you've been able to confirm of those visas that have been canceled so far.
Yeah, so nationwide, I think now we are at over 1,000 students whose visas have been revoked. And in Florida, so far, from what I'm aware of, there are 29 students who have had their visas revoked, 18 at FIU, 8 at the University of Florida, and yeah, that's what we know so far.
And so, what does this mean for the students? If you could just kind of explain to us, when you have that student visa revoked, what happens?
Yeah, so there can be a couple ways that this happens, but basically there is a government database called SEVIS, which tracks whether or not an international student is compliant with the law. And what seems to be happening is that immigration officials are going into that database and changing the status of a student's legal standing to attend the university. And once that status is changed, that means that they are not allowed to attend class any longer. And for students who have graduated with F1 visas, there is a period known as OPT where they're legally allowed for a certain period of time to work in their field. And that is also taken away when their student status is revoked.
What have you learned about why these students in particular, what they maybe have in common that kind of could be spurring this on as far as their visas being canceled now?
Yeah, so I am not aware of why exactly these students in Florida specifically have had their visas revoked. There was an instance that I reported on about a student at the University of Florida who was stopped in a traffic stop and he was driving with a suspended license. And it turned out that his status had also expired back in October. He was detained by immigration officials. And while he was in detention, he made the decision to leave on his own and go back to Colombia, where he is from. As far as the 29 students in Florida, it's not clear exactly what happened. What we do know is that in many other states, a similar thing is happening, and it seems that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is targeting students that have had any type of encounter with law enforcement. So this could be a traffic stop, um, some type of charge, that they were never convicted for, but just any type of encounter that may be on their record. And I spoke to some immigration attorneys who, in other states, are filing class action lawsuits on behalf of these students, alleging that these visa revocations are illegal. And the attorneys that I spoke to told me that it's possibly an AI mechanism that is being used to go through this government database and determine which students may have had some type of encounter with law enforcement, even if they were not breaking the law.
Is this something we expect to continue to see?
I'm not really in a position to, think about or decide what may or may not happen in the future, but I can say that over the past week, the numbers of visas that have been revoked from students across the nation has continued to climb as reporters find out about more of these instances. And also of note is that now with student visas who are being revoked, oftentimes the university is not notified by immigration that this is happening, and they find out from the student.
Now, we have heard some comments from Secretary of State Marco Rubio about student visas. And I know you also wrote a piece speaking to some students at Florida International University um, uh, uh, that were concerned because of some of his warnings.
Yeah, I have spoken to a handful of international students, and also I've spoken to a handful that did not want to speak to me because they are so scared that even speaking to the media off the record is a risk that they're not willing to take. International students right now, whether they're on F1 visas, even students on green cards, are very concerned. They feel like they cannot speak out, and go attending different political events. And they're really worried about potentially being detained or deported. Right now in the state of Florida, so far, 11 higher education institutions have signed on to the 287G program, which basically deputizes university police departments to enforce immigration law. It's a collaborative agreement between police departments at these universities and immigration. And so this is an added an added level to this, and something that students who I've spoke to say makes them even more nervous because now their campus police officers soon may be trained to actually act as immigration officials.
All right. Anything else, Clara-Sophia, that you've learned that you want people to know about this before I let you go?
I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I always appreciate you joining us here on Florida Live, and we appreciate you talking with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this.